account that in a debate that asked proposition to defend assimilation, they continually try to argue why this allows them to maintain their culture, where the actual definition of assimilation is giving up their culture and adopting a more Chinese culture. So when OG tell you that culture and religion is the most important thing to them, in this debate, that means OG tell you that oppositions win the debate. Let's talk about what actually happened in the debate, because we'll play the game anyway. 3 points of clash. 1, briefly on political power. 2, on on the counterfactual, where the Tibet-China relationship is going. And 3, on where Tibetans can better maintain their culture and religion. I think the last class is most important, just because that's what happened throughout the debate. Before that, a few extraneous points of rebuttal. 1, they talk a little bit about choice. They say, at least under our world, there's a choice for Tibetans who want to assimilate. Even if it is true that the Chinese government today is not willing to accept Tibetans who want to assimilate, we don't see why that would be true, given everything they tell you in analysis as to why it would be the interest of the Chinese government to accept even individuals who want to assimilate. But there are certainly other countries out there other than China in which Tibetans who feel no particular connection to Tibet or to Tibetan culture can assimilate. So we just don't think choice is a part of this debate. 2, they tell you, look, no, thank you. Tom tells you, look, they're going to get hired, not because the government is going to hire them, but because the people are going to hire them, CEOs. 2 problems with that. 1, note, this is somewhat problematic, given that their entire cultural argument stems from the fact that they're going to be hired into governments. Benji gives you Ayal gives you entire analysis as to why that's unlikely to happen. We'll get to that in the class, but at the point at which he gives up on the fact that government officials are going to hire them, he also gives up on his extension. No, thank you. 4 other answers to that. A, it's the opposite of what Noam says to you. B, Ayal tells you there are years of conflict going on. That means CEOs, most likely not those people who urbanized recently, but those who have been in positions of power in China for a very long time, are people who were brought up to disrespect and dislike Tibetans. It's similar to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As a response to that, they say, look, people hire Palestinians all the time because they're cheaper. To which we say, if you're being paid less than the cheapest Chinese laborer, that is probably not a job that you as a Tibetan want, that is slavery. Lastly, they say to you, Tibetans can't practice today. That's our counter world. To which we say, that's simply a lie. The entire struggle that Tibetans are holding, the entire reason they maintain their country, in spite of what OG tell you about politics not being important to them, is because in Tibet, what they define currently as Tibet, they can have their mosques or whatever it is they call their temples. They can walk around wearing the symbols of their religion more so than they can do in China. So to the extent that they're not entirely religiously free, they are by definition more religiously free in Tibet than they are in China. First, let's talk about the political power. So OO tell you that A, Chinese people are racist, so they're not going to likely get any more political capital, and B, it's easier to advocate internationally when it's a unique culture for which you're advocating. We think OO are right, but we think that at the point at which OG analyze that political power is not something that they want, and CG continuously tell you that the concept of nation is foreign to them, and there's no response to that, that's simply not an important clash in this debate. So let's get to what was more important in the debate as it took place. So first, on the counterfactual, where is the China-Tibet relationship going? So OG tell you that there are protests that scare China into going worse, into getting worse. Now, CG tell you in response to OG that China tends to toughen its stance against external threats and not to give up. So we think there's a little bit of tension there. CG are trying to tell you that when people externally try and influence China, what China does is tend to strengthen their stance, and OG tell you this is a reason why China is going to give up on their stance because there are external threats threatening to them. But OO come with a counter to this, no thank you, and tell you there's a liberalization. CG tell you in response to that, China's not actually culturally liberalizing, they're just economically pragmatic. We would add to that that it is often economically pragmatic to give up on certain aspects of your culture within China or to make concessions towards Tibet in order to gain trade agreements with the West. That is the strong side of the case that governments never deal with in this debate. I'll take you guys in a moment. Bottom line of this, though, is saying, regardless of what happens, regardless of if it's going to get slightly worse or slightly better, at the very least, this is a process that's going to take a very lot of time. This is crucial because Ayal analyzes and gets no response to why, even if this is a motion that should happen, it is certainly not one that should happen now when the Tibetan people are so close to lacking leadership to help them rebuild culture in a newly assimilated form. OG.
Ops' burden in this debate is to defend the status quo of the struggle of the Tibetans for land and independence, which is the opposite of assimilation and is actually leading to worse outcomes. Please compare that to our analysis of at least more chances of survival and of preserving certain lifestyles.
So I think that's what we've been doing the whole debate, and we're going to keep doing that. We think status quo is less bad than the shift you create in status quo. I'm pretty sure I all spent like quite a lot of time analyzing that. Got your name right this time. So lastly, let's talk about where Tibetans can better maintain their culture and religion. We think this is the most important question in the debate. So OG start out and tell you they're going to allow to practice culture because of negotiations. As we already told you, CG kind of countered that by saying that when they are put up against the external pressure, they tend to harden their case. Ayal further analyzes why this is unlikely to happen, and this comes up from a POI already, saying they are currently a position of power. Specifically also, Tibetans are currently in a weakened position because of the location of their spiritual leader. And lastly, it is specifically the religious threat and the religious leader threat, which is the greatest political threat to China. So we think they are unlikely to do all of the things governments think they're going to do. Ovo will tell you that they're not going to, that the specific individuals who remain non-assimilators will be a threat that gets cracked down on. Ayal adds to this as well. He says it's not specifically government we're afraid of cracking down. It is the individuals within society who will raise counter to these people. But the point at which see these people walking out in their traditional robes or doing their traditional prayers and their traditional temples are threatened by these individuals and by their actions because of years of animosity between the two cultures. This means that the culture cannot be practiced safely in the common area. Egel further tells you why this specifically to the religious people of Tibet is the most important aspect of their culture, the ability to explicitly practice it, which means this is a huge harm to them. Now CG tells you Tibetans are going to get some sort of jump into government. Ayala tells you this is unlikely to happen because that is the single greatest fear of the Chinese government. Tone backs that up when saying it's not government, it's CEOs. At the end of the day, this concession is making Tibetans lose their culture, the one thing governments agreed is the most important in this debate. Please oppose.